Behind a biker bar called the Iron Pit, a 7-year-old girl named Zuri, which means beautiful in Swahili, was curled between two garbage bags, shivering in the rain. She weighed 41 pounds. She hadn't taken her cancer medication in 19 days. And the website her mother built to save her life had just crossed $215,000 in donations. Before we go any further, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. And if you've ever felt invisible, stay with me. This story is for you. Thunder rolled across the sky like a warning nobody asked for. The rain came down in sheets, turning the alley behind the Iron Pit into a river of grease and garbage runoff. It was the kind of night that made sensible people stay inside. The kind of night that made trouble feel close. Bear didn't mind the rain. After 23 years riding with the Iron Crusaders, weather was just weather. He'd driven through worse. Slept through worse. Buried brothers in worse. He grabbed the trash bags from behind the bar, 2 in each massive fist, and shouldered open the back door. The cold hit him like a slap. Good. Kept him sharp. The dumpster sat about 30 feet from the door, rusted green and overflowing because the pickup truck hadn't come in 3 days. Bear grunted. Tossed the first bag, listened to it thud against the metal. Tossed the second. That's when he heard it. A sound so small it almost disappeared under the rain. A whimper. High-pitched. Weak. Bear froze. His hand went to his belt out of instinct, no weapon there, just habit. He tilted his head, listening hard. Nothing but rain and distant thunder. Then it came again. Definitely not a cat. Not a dog either. Human. Bear pulled the flashlight from his back pocket, a heavy maglite that doubled as a weapon when needed, and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across wet concrete, puddles, trash bags piled against the fence. And then he saw her. A child. Couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Huddled between 2 trash bags like she was trying to disappear into them. Her skin was gray, almost the same color as the bags. Her head was bald, not shaved. But the patchy, painful kind of bald that came from something medical. She wore a hoodie 3 sizes too big. The sleeves swallowing her hands, the hem hanging past her knees. She threw up one trembling arm to block the light, and her voice cracked out like a broken bird. Don't tell Marcus. Please. I'll be good. I just wanted a sandwich. Bear felt something inside his chest crack open. He'd seen a lot in his life. Done things he wasn't proud of. Watched men die. Made men bleed. But this child, shaking in the rain, begging not to be punished for wanting food, this hit different. He lowered the flashlight so it wasn't blinding her and dropped to one knee in the puddle. Didn't care about his jeans getting soaked. Didn't care about anything except the terror in those eyes. Hey now, he said, keeping his voice low. Gentle. The way you'd talk to a spooked animal. Nobody's telling nobody nothing. You hear me? You're safe. The girl didn't move. Her whole body was trembling, and not just from the cold. Bear could see her arms wrapped around her stomach, see the way her ribs pressed against the wet fabric of her hoodie. What's your name, sweetheart? She hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, Zuri. Zuri, Bear repeated. That's a beautiful name. You know what it means? She nodded, a tiny movement. Beautiful. Mama told me. Before. That one word carried weight Bear didn't fully understand yet. But he would. Well, Zuri, I'm Bear. And I'm gonna get you somewhere warm and dry, okay? You don't gotta be scared of me. I know I look like a mean old grizzly. But I promise I ain't gonna hurt you. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his hand touched her shoulder, he felt how thin she was. Skin and bone. Nothing else. Gently, carefully, he scooped her up. She weighed nothing. Less than nothing. Like holding a bundle of dry leaves. As he lifted her, her hoodie shifted, and Bear saw what she was wearing underneath. A faded t-shirt, stained and ripped at the collar. But he could still read the logo. Make a wish. His jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. Cancer. This child had cancer. Come on, little one, he murmured, wrapping his leather vest around her shaking shoulders. Let's get you inside. Zuri pressed her face against Bear's chest as he carried her through the back door of the Iron Pit. The leather smelled like rain and motor oil and something else, something warm. Safe. She couldn't remember the last time she felt safe. 8 months ago, Mama had bought her the Make-A-Wish shirt. They'd gone to the hospital together, and a nice lady with a clipboard had asked Zuri what she wanted most in the world. Zuri said she wanted to see the ocean. She'd never seen it for real, only in pictures. Mama had cried that day. Real tears, the kind that made her mascara run. She'd held Zuri so tight it almost hurt. And she'd whispered, "You're my brave girl. We're gonna beat this together." Which that? That was before Marcus moved in. Before Mama stopped crying. Before everything changed. Now Zuri couldn't remember the last time Mama held her at all. The main room of the Iron Pit went quiet when Bear walked in carrying the child. Pool cues stopped mid-shot. Conversations died. A dozen men in leather and denim turned to look, their faces shifting from confusion to concern. The hell? Someone muttered. Bear ignored them. He walked straight to the booth in the corner, the one with the best heating vent, and set Zuri down gently on the cracked vinyl seat. "Doc," he called out. "Get over here. Now." A wiry man in his 50s pushed through the small crowd. Doc wasn't a real doctor, he'd been a combat medic in Vietnam, but he knew more about patching people up than most emergency rooms. He took one look at Zuri and his face went pale. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "Bear, what?" "Found her in the alley. Behind the dumpsters." Doc knelt down, his movement slow and deliberate. "Hey there, honey. I'm Doc. I'm gonna check you out real quick. Make sure you're okay. That all right?" "Yeah." Zuri looked at Bear. He nodded. She looked back at Doc and gave a tiny nod of her own. As Doc began his examination, checking her pulse, her temperature. Looking at her eyes, Bear noticed something fall from the pocket of her oversized hoodie. A laminated card. About the size of a business card, landing face up on the booth seat. He picked it up. The card had a photo of Zuri on it, but a different Zuri. A Zuri with a little more meat on her bones. A clean dress. A brave smile. Below the photo, in neat printed letters, "My name is Zuri. I have leukemia. Please give what you can to help my mommy save me. God bless you." On the back was a QR code. Bear's stomach turned. He'd seen cards like this before. Panhandling scripts. But this one was different. This one was professional. Laminated. Mass-produced. "Ghost," he said. His voice tight. "Get over here." A younger man appeared at his shoulder. Ghost was the club's tech guy, the one who handled anything with a screen or a signal. He was 32, thin as a rail, with dark circles under his eyes from too many nights staring at computers. "What you got?" Bear handed him the card. "Scan that code. Tell me what you find." Ghost pulled out his phone, opened the camera app, and held it over the QR code. A website loaded almost instantly. "Oh damn," Ghost murmured. "What?" "It's a fundraising page." Save Zuri's smile. "Hang on, let me." His fingers flew across the screen. "Bear, this thing has raised over $215,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. $215,000. Bear repeated slowly. "And change. Last update was posted yesterday." Ghost read from the screen, "Zuri is fighting hard. New specialized treatment starting tomorrow. Thank you for your continued support and prayers." Bear looked down at the child in the booth. The child whose ribs he could count through her shirt. The child whose skin was gray and dry. The child who had begged him for a sandwich like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Doc," he said quietly. "When's the last time this girl had her meds?" Doc had found something in Zuri's other pocket, an orange prescription bottle. Empty. He squinted at the label. "This was filled 4 months ago. Should have lasted 30 days. He looked up at Bear. His eyes hard. "She hasn't had her medication in at least 3 months. Maybe longer. 3 months. Over $200,000 raised for her treatment. And this child was hiding behind a dumpster, starving, going through withdrawal from pain medication she desperately needed." Bear felt a rage building in his chest. The kind of rage that made men do things they couldn't take back. But he pushed it down. For now, he knelt beside the booth, putting himself at eye level with Zuri. "Sweetheart, I need you to tell me something. The people who made the card, the ones collecting money for you, where's that money going?" Zuri's eyes went wide with fear. She shook her head quickly. "I can't. Marcus said if I told anyone, he'd..." She stopped. Swallowed hard. "Marcus can't hurt you here," Bear said firmly. "I promise you that. But I need to know the truth. Can you tell me?" For a long moment, Zuri just stared at him. Then, slowly, she began to talk. "Mama and Marcus take pictures of me. For the website. They put makeup on me and say smile, smile, look brave. Then after, Marcus takes me to different places. Parking lots, shopping centers. He gives me the card and says get money. If I don't get enough, I don't eat." Bear's hands curled into fists. "And your medicine?" "Marcus said I don't need it. He said I just gotta look sick for the pictures. He said the medicine was too expensive and we needed the money for..." She hesitated. "For what, baby?" "For the new house." The room had gone completely silent. Every biker in the Iron Pit was listening now, their faces carved from stone. What new house? Bear asked. Though he already knew the answer. The big one. With the pool. Mama said when we move there, everything will be better. Zuri's voice dropped to a whisper. But I don't think I'm coming with them. Doc made a sound like he'd been punched. Bear reached out and took Zuri's tiny hand in his massive one. Listen to me. You're not going back there. Not tonight. Not ever. You understand? Zuri's eyes filled with tears. But Marcus has a gun. He shoots the squirrels in the yard. He said if I ever ran away, he'd ham. He can shoot squirrels, Bear interrupted. His voice low and steady. But he ain't never seen a wolf pack. He stood up, turning to face the room. A dozen hardened bikers stared back at him, waiting. Brothers. Bear said. We got work to do. The back room of the Iron Pit had seen a lot over the years. Poker games that lasted until sunrise. Meetings that decided the fate of men. Conversations that never happened, officially speaking. But tonight, it had transformed into something else entirely. A war room. Ghost had commandeered the pool table, covering the green felt with laptops, tablets, and a tangle of charging cables. The blue glow of multiple screens lit up his face as his fingers flew across keyboards, pulling threads that most people didn't even know existed. Bear stood behind him, arms crossed, watching. The other brothers had formed a loose circle around the table. Doc, Chains, Razor, Priest, and the younger members hanging back, knowing their place but ready to move when called. In the corner booth, wrapped in a wool blanket someone had found in the storage closet, Zuri slept. Or tried to. Every few minutes, her body would twitch, and she'd make a small sound of distress. Doc said it was the withdrawal, her body screaming for the pain medication it had been denied for weeks. They'd given her what they could. Some children's Tylenol. Warm soup. A promise that she was safe. It wasn't enough. But it was something. All right. Ghost said. Not looking up from his screens. I've been digging into this Save Zuri Smile campaign for the past hour. And brothers, it's worse than we thought. How much worse? Bear asked. Ghost pulled up a spreadsheet on the largest screen, rows and columns of numbers that meant nothing to most of the men in the room. The campaign launched 14 months ago, right after Zuri was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The initial goal was $50,000 for treatment costs. And they raised over $200,000, Chains said. He was a massive man, nearly as big as Bear, with a voice like gravel in a blender. $215,847 as of tonight. Ghost confirmed. But here's where it gets ugly. He pulled up another window, a timeline with photos. I cross-referenced every donation spike with the campaign updates. Watch this pattern. The room leaned in. November 12 last year, campaign posts a photo of Zuri in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs, looking brave. Caption says she's starting her first round of chemo. Donations that day. $8,400. Ghost scrolled down. December 3, another photo. Zuri's lost her hair. She's holding a teddy bear someone sent. Caption says the treatment is working but they need more for specialized medication. Donations. $12,000. January 15, Zuri's in a wheelchair. Oxygen tube in her nose. Caption talks about a setback, says they need to try a different approach. Donations, $15,000 in 2 days. Bear's jaw tightened. She was never in treatment, was she? That's what I'm getting at. Ghost pulled up a different database, something that looked official, medical. I got a friend who works at Colorado Children's Hospital. Off the record, he checked for me. Zuri was admitted once, 14 months ago, for initial diagnosis. She was supposed to start chemo 2 weeks later. But she never came back. Not once. No follow-up appointments. No treatments. No nothing. The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. They took the diagnosis, Doc said slowly, his voice cold with controlled rage, and they turned it into a business. It gets worse. Ghost switched to another screen, a real estate listing. A beautiful 2-story house in the suburbs, white columns, green lawn, swimming pool gleaming in the backyard. 3 weeks ago. A property in Cherry Creek was purchased for $425,000. Cash. Buyer's name. Marcus Thompson. Cherry Creek. Razor whistled. That's money, neighborhood. Big money. Ghost pulled up another document. I also found a purchase order for a BMW X5. And receipts for designer clothes, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all charged to an account linked to the campaign's PayPal. Bear turned to look at Zuri, still sleeping fitfully in the corner booth. 41 pounds. Skin like paper, begging for a sandwich behind a dumpster while her mother and stepfather bought a $500,000 house with the money strangers had donated to save her life. They're not just stealing from the donors, Bear said quietly. They're killing her. Slowly. On purpose. Think about it. Ghost continued. As long as Zuri's alive and sick, the donations keep coming. If she dies, the sympathy peaks. They'll probably set up a memorial fund, milk it for another $100,000. But if she gets better? He shook his head. The money stops. The gravy train ends. So they stopped her treatment. Doc finished. They're letting the cancer do their dirty work for them while they cash in. Priest, the oldest member of the chapter, spoke for the first time. He was 73 years old, had ridden with the Crusaders since before most of them were born, and his word carried weight. I've seen evil in my time, he said, his voice like dry leaves rustling. But this is something else. This is cold. Bear nodded slowly. Show me everything you've got on Marcus Thompson. Ghost pulled up a new file: driver's license photo, social media profiles, public records. The face that stared back at them was handsome in a slick way. Clean shaven, good teeth, the kind of smile that made people trust him. The kind of smile that hid things. Marcus James Thompson. Age 34. No steady employment history. Bounced around between car sales, insurance, real estate. Married once before. Divorced. His ex-wife filed a restraining order against him in 2019. Claimed he was controlling, manipulative, and had threatened her when she tried to leave. What happened with the restraining order? Dropped. She moved out of state. No follow-up. Ghost scrolled down. He met Tasha, that's Zuri's mom, about 2 years ago. Right around the time Zuri's dad died in a car accident. Bear's eyebrows rose. Zuri's father is dead? Yeah. Died 18 months before the diagnosis. Left a small life insurance policy, about $30,000. From what I can tell, that money was gone within 6 months of Marcus moving in. The picture was coming into focus now. A grieving widow. A sick child. A charming man who saw opportunity where others saw tragedy. He targeted them. Chains said. Found a vulnerable woman with a dying kid and saw dollar signs. That's my read. Ghost agreed. And once he got control of the finances, he took over everything. The campaign, the medical decisions, the money. Tasha's name is on the paperwork, but Marcus is the one pulling strings. Bear thought about the way Zuri had flinched when she said Marcus's name. The way her voice had dropped to a whisper. The fear in her eyes that went deeper than hunger or cold. What else do we know about him? Ghost hesitated. There's something else. About a year ago, there was a report filed with CPS Child Protective Services, anonymous tip. Someone said they saw Zuri begging for money in a parking lot, looking malnourished. What happened? Caseworker visited the house. Marcus and Tasha gave them the whole show: clean home, full fridge, Zuri in a nice dress looking sad but cared for. They explained she was sick, that the begging was a community outreach thing for the fundraiser. Caseworker closed the file, no follow-up, so the system already failed her once. At least once. Ghost pulled up one more document. Here's the thing that really got me. The campaign has a comments section. Hundreds of messages from people praying for Zuri, sending love, sharing the page. But there are a few that stand out. He scrolled to a highlighted comment from 3 months ago. I saw this little girl outside a grocery store last week. She was by herself. Holding that card. Shaking like a leaf. Where were her parents? Something doesn't feel right about this. Another comment. 2 months ago. Donated $200 last month, but the updates don't match what my friend said when she saw Zuri at a gas station. The girl looked way sicker in person than in the pictures. Is the money actually going to treatment? And one more. From just 2 weeks ago. I'm a nurse. I've seen kids going through chemo. That picture from last week doesn't look like a child on active treatment. The skin tone. The energy level, something's off. I hope I'm wrong. People noticed, Ghost said. Some of them, anyway. But their comments got buried under hundreds of supportive messages. Nobody wanted to believe the worst. Lows. Bear stared at the screen, at those 3 voices crying out in a wilderness of well-meaning ignorance. They'd seen the truth. They'd tried to say something, and nobody had listened. Print everything, Bear said. Every receipt, every photo, every comment. I want a paper trail thick enough to bury these people. Already on it. Bear turned to the room. Brothers. Here's our problem. We could call the cops right now. Hand over everything Ghost just found. But what happens? Chains answered. Marcus lawyers up. Puts on his pretty boy smile. Says it's all a misunderstanding. The money's been going to alternative treatments. Zuri's just having a hard time. He knows how to play the game. And Zuri? Goes back to them while the investigation drags on. Could be weeks. Months. By the time anyone figures out the truth. He didn't finish the sentence. We need more, Bear said. We need something undeniable. Something that proves beyond any doubt what they've been doing. And we need to make sure Zuri never sets foot in that house again. How do we do that? The youngest member asked. His name was Tommy, a prospect who'd been with the club less than a year. We can't exactly kidnap her. We don't have to. Bear's eyes were hard. We just have to expose the truth so completely that there's nowhere for Marcus and Tasha to hide. We burn down their lie in front of everyone. Then we let the system do what it should have done a year ago. Doc spoke up. That still doesn't solve the immediate problem. That girl needs medical attention. Real medical attention. Tonight. I know. Bear pulled out his phone. Which is why I'm calling in some favors. Ghost. You said Marcus bought a house in Cherry Creek? Yeah. They're moving in this weekend. Moving in? Bear frowned. From where? Ghost checked his notes. They've been renting a place in Aurora. Signed the closing papers on the Cherry Creek house 2 weeks ago. The move was supposed to happen yesterday, but they pushed it to this weekend. There's actually a. He stopped. Eyes widening. What? There's a housewarming party. Tonight. According to Tasha's Facebook. They're throwing a new homeowner celebration for family and friends. Catering, DJ, the whole thing. The room went still. A party. While Zuri starved in an alley. While her cancer went untreated. While her body slowly shut down from medication withdrawal. Her mother and stepfather were throwing a party in the house they bought with stolen donations. Bear felt the rage rising again. This time, he didn't push it down. What time does the party start? Already started. About an hour ago. Bear looked at his brothers. One by one, they met his gaze. Chains cracked his knuckles. Razor smiled a smile that had nothing to do with humor. Priest nodded once, slowly. Like a judge delivering a verdict. All right, Bear said. Here's what we're going to do. If you believe that children should be protected, not exploited, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Bikers Bite. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge, it wears leather. Before they moved, Bear went back to the corner booth. Zuri had woken up, or maybe she'd never really been asleep. Her eyes were open, watching him approach, still carrying that wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust adults. Bear sat down across from her, the vinyl seat creaking under his weight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Zuri, he said finally, I need to ask you some things. Things that might be hard to talk about. Can you do that for me? She nodded slowly. Tell me about Marcus. When did he come into your life? Zuri pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. When she spoke, her voice was distant. Like she was reciting something from far away. After Daddy died. Mama cried all the time. She said we were going to lose the house. Lose everything. Her eyes dropped to the table. Then Marcus came. He was nice at first. He brought flowers for Mama and toys for me. He said he was going to take care of us. When did things change? After I got sick. Zuri's fingers found a loose thread on the blanket and started pulling at it. Mama took me to the doctor because I was tired all the time, and bruising. I had bruises everywhere, but I didn't remember hitting anything. The doctor did tests and then. She trailed off. And then you got the diagnosis. She nodded. Mama cried again. Different crying this time. Scary crying. But Marcus. He didn't cry. He just got real quiet. And then he started making phone calls. Bear leaned forward slightly. What kind of phone calls? I don't know. But after that, everything changed. He made the website, he made the cards. He said I had to help. That I was the only one who could save us. The manipulation had started immediately, Bear realized. The moment the diagnosis came through, Marcus had seen his opportunity, a sick child. A sympathetic public, a river of donations just waiting to flow. What about your treatment? Zuri. The chemotherapy the doctors wanted you to have? Zuri's face changed. Something flickered across it. Fear. Confusion. Shame. Marcus said the regular doctors didn't know what they were doing. He said he found better doctors. Special doctors. But we had to pay for them first. We had to get enough money. Did you ever see these special doctors? She shook her head. Did you ever get any treatment at all? After that first time in the hospital? Again. She shook her head. Her eyes were filling with tears now. Marcus said I had to stay sick. For the pictures. He said if I got better, people would stop helping us. He said. Her voice broke. He said if I didn't do what he told me, God would punish me. He said the cancer was because I was bad and the only way to make God happy was to do what Marcus said. Bear's hands were trembling. Not with fear. with rage. You're not bad, Zuri. You hear me? None of this is your fault. None of it. The only bad people in this story are the ones who hurt you. A tear slipped down her cheek. But Mama. Your mama made choices, Bear said carefully. Bad choices. She let Marcus hurt you. That doesn't mean you have to forgive her right now. That doesn't mean you have to understand. It just means you have to know that what happened to you wasn't because of anything you did. Zuri looked at him with those huge, exhausted eyes. Are you going to make them stop? Yes. How? Bear reached across the table and took her small hand in his. We're going to show everyone the truth. Everyone who gave money to help you, they're going to see what really happened. And once they see it, Marcus and your mama won't be able to hide anymore. But Marcus has a gun, Zuri whispered. He shoots the squirrels in the yard. He said if I ever told anyone, if I ever tried to run, he'd shoot me too. Like a squirrel. Bear leaned closer. Zuri. Listen to me. I've been riding motorcycles and dealing with bad men since before your mama was born. I've seen scary. I've been scary. And I promise you, Marcus ain't seen nothing like what's coming for him tonight. What's coming? Bear smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. A wolf pack. The next hour was a blur of activity. Bear made calls. A lot of calls. The Iron Crusaders weren't just a local club, they had chapters across 3 states, connections that stretched even further. When the word went out that a child was in danger, the response was immediate. Ghost continued his digital excavation, printing out everything he could find. Bank statements. Property records. The IP addresses showing that campaign updates had been posted from locations miles away from any hospital or treatment center. He created a presentation. A damning slideshow that laid out the fraud in undeniable detail. Doc made his own calls to contacts at the hospital, to a lawyer he knew who specialized in child welfare cases, to a social worker who had a reputation for actually giving a damn. The legal machinery would need to be ready to move the moment the confrontation was over. And in the parking lot of the Iron Pit, motorcycles began to arrive. They came from all directions. Headlights cutting through the rain, engines rumbling like approaching thunder. Men in leather and denim, patches declaring their allegiance to chapters across the region. Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs. Even a few from as far as Albuquerque and Salt Lake City. They'd heard the call. They'd answered. By 11 o'clock, there were 43 motorcycles in the parking lot. 43 riders, ranging in age from 22 to 73. All of them ready to move. Bear stood on the back steps of the bar, looking out at the assembled force. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat, but he didn't seem to notice. His voice, when he spoke, carried across the lot without effort. Brothers, thank you for coming. I know some of you rode through hell to get here tonight. I know you got families, jobs, lives that didn't include standing in the rain waiting to hear what an old man has to say. A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the crowd. Here's the situation. Inside this bar, there's a 7-year-old girl named Zuri. She has cancer. She should be in a hospital, getting treatment that could save her life. Instead, she was hiding behind our dumpster, starving. Because the people who were supposed to take care of her decided she was worth more as a prop than as a person. Bear let that sink in. Her mother and stepfather have raised over $200,000 in donations for her treatment. They haven't spent a dime of it on her. Not one. Instead, they bought a mansion, cars, designer clothes. And tonight, while Zuri was eating garbage to survive, they're throwing a party to celebrate their new house. The rumble that went through the crowd was like distant thunder. Angry. Dangerous. Now, we could let the system handle this. Call the cops, file reports, wait for the wheels of justice to turn. Bear shook his head. But we all know how that goes. Lawyers, delays. Maybe Marcus talks his way out of it. Gets Zuri back. And finishes what he started. I'm not willing to take that chance. Are you? Hell no, someone shouted. What's the plan, Bear? Another voice called. The plan is simple. We show up at their party. All of us. And we show everyone there, every friend, every family member, every neighbor exactly what Marcus and Tasha have been doing. We bring the evidence. We bring the truth. And we make sure there's nowhere left for them to hide. What about the cops? Ghost already called in an anonymous tip. They'll show up. But not before we do. Not before everyone at that party sees exactly who they've been celebrating with. Chain stepped forward. What if Marcus tries something stupid? Marcus has a gun. Bear acknowledged. He likes to shoot squirrels with it. Zuri told me he threatened to shoot her if she ever talked. He paused, letting the words land like stones. Brothers, I'm not asking anyone to do anything illegal tonight. We're not there to hurt anyone. We're there to expose the truth. But if Marcus pulls a weapon on us or anyone else. He left the sentence unfinished. The crowd's silence was answer enough. Doc's going to stay here with Zuri. She's in no shape to see this. Priest, I need you to stay too. Keep the bar locked down. Anyone shows up asking questions, you don't know nothing. Priest nodded. Ghost is coming with us. He's got a projector in his van. We're going to put on a show for those party guests they'll never forget. Chains, Razor, you're my flanks. Everyone else, follow my lead. Stay tight. Stay smart. And remember we're the good guys tonight. Let's act like it. He pulled on his gloves and walked toward his bike, a black Harley-Davidson Road King that had seen more miles than most cars see in a lifetime. As he swung his leg over the seat, he felt the familiar weight settle beneath him. The weight of power. Of purpose. One more thing, he called out. That little girl in there asked me if we were going to make them stop. I told her yes. Tonight, we keep that promise. He kicked the engine to life. 42 other engines roared in response. Let's ride. The sound of 43 motorcycles moving in formation is not something you forget. It's not like a car engine or a truck horn, it's deeper, more primal. It's thunder given form. It's the sound of something coming that you can't stop. The convoy stretched for nearly a quarter mile as they wound through the rain-slick streets. Bear led, his headlight cutting through the darkness like a single burning eye. Behind him, the others followed in tight formation 2 by 2, engines synchronized, a rolling wall of chrome and leather. They passed through the industrial district first, past warehouses and auto shops locked up tight for the night. A homeless man huddled under an overpass looked up as they passed, his mouth falling open at the sight. A police cruiser sitting at a red light watched them go but made no move to follow. Smart cop. Then they crossed into the suburbs. The change was immediate. Neat lawns replaced concrete. Streetlights glowed warm instead of harsh. Houses got bigger, nicer, more expensive. This was the kind of neighborhood where people bought security systems they never needed and called the police if a stranger walked too slowly past their driveway. The rumble of 43 Harleys shattered the silence like a bomb. Porch lights flicked on. Curtains twitched. Faces appeared in windows, confused. Alarmed. Some openly afraid. These were people who'd only seen motorcycle clubs in movies, who believed every rider was a criminal and every leather jacket hid a weapon. Tonight, they weren't entirely wrong. Ghost's voice crackled through the Bluetooth headset in Bear's helmet. 2 blocks up, take a right on Magnolia. House is halfway down on the left. You can't miss it. Bear didn't respond. He didn't need to. The bikes behind him moved as one, leaning into the turn like a school of predatory fish. And then he saw it. The house was everything the listing had promised and more. 2 stories. White colonial columns. A lawn that probably cost more to maintain than most people's rent. The driveway was full of cars, BMWs, Mercedes, a Lexus or 2. The windows blazed with light. And even from the street, Bear could hear the thump of bass from a sound system. A banner hung across the front porch. Welcome home. Bear felt his lip curl. Welcome home. While Zuri shivered behind a dumpster, these people were celebrating, drinking champagne, probably eating catered food. Congratulating Marcus and Tasha on their new beginning. He didn't slow down. Instead, he gunned his engine and turned directly onto the lawn. The front tire dug into the perfect grass, sending up a spray of mud and sod. Bear carved a line straight toward the porch, stopping only when his headlight illuminated the banner above. Behind him, the other riders followed, fanning out across the lawn like an invading army. 43 motorcycles. 43 engines idling in thunderous unison. 43 riders sitting motionless in the rain, facing the house. The music stopped. The front door opened. People spilled onto the porch, drinks in hand, faces slack with shock and confusion. And from the middle of the crowd, a man stepped forward. Clean-shaven. Good teeth. The kind of smile that made people trust him. Marcus Thompson. What the hell is this? He demanded, his voice trying for authority and landing somewhere closer to fear. This is private property. You can't just. Bear shut off his engine. The sudden silence was almost louder than the noise had been. He dismounted slowly, deliberately, letting Marcus get a good look at him. 6'4", 260 pounds, arms like bridge cables, beard like a biblical prophet, and eyes that had seen things Marcus couldn't imagine in his worst nightmares. Marcus Thompson, Bear said, his voice carrying across the lawn. We need to talk. Before we see what happens next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Zuri. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your engagement helps us tell more stories like this. Marcus stood on his new porch, surrounded by his new friends, in front of his new house, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 10 seconds ago, He'd been inside accepting congratulations, shaking hands, playing the role he'd perfected over the past year and a half. The devoted stepfather. The tireless fundraiser. The man who'd sacrificed everything to save a dying child. Now he was staring at 43 bikers who looked like they'd ridden straight out of hell, and something in his gut was telling him that the game was over. But Marcus hadn't survived this long by showing weakness. He straightened his spine, arranged his features into an expression of righteous indignation, and took a step forward. "I don't know who you think you are," he said, "but you're trespassing. I've already called the police. So whatever this is about, I suggest you turn around and leave before you make things worse for yourselves." Bear didn't move. "You haven't called anyone. You were too busy trying to figure out what's happening, but go ahead, call them. We'll wait." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Fear? Maybe? Or calculation? "What do you want?" "We want to talk about the money, Marcus." Bear took a step forward. "The $215,847 that generous strangers donated to save Zuri's life. We want to talk about where it went." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He covered it quickly, but Bear saw it. The flinch. The brief flash of "oh no" before the mask slid back into place. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said. "Zuri is at home, resting. She's been through a lot. And the money from the fundraiser has gone exactly where it's supposed to go toward her treatment." "Really?" Bear turned to look at the house behind Marcus. The columns. The chandelier visible through the front window, the fleet of luxury cars in the driveway. "Because this house cost $425,000. Cash. And you paid for it 3 weeks ago. Right around the time Zuri's prescription for pain medication ran out." The party guests on the porch were listening now. Bear could see them exchanging glances, confusion giving way to something else. Doubt. That's none of your business," Marcus sputtered. "Our finances are private. And the money for the house came from other sources. Investments. Family. It has nothing to do with Zuri's fund." "Ghost," Bear called without looking away from Marcus. "Show them." A white van that had followed the motorcycles pulled up to the curb. Its side door slid open, and Ghost jumped out carrying a portable projector. Within seconds, he had it set up and aimed at the largest flat surface available, the white side of a moving truck parked in the driveway. The image that appeared was the Save Zuri Smile website. Blown up to 8 feet tall. Visible to everyone on the porch and half the neighborhood. $215,000. Ghost announced. His voice carrying in the night air. Donated by over 4,000 people. Teachers. Grandmothers. Veterans. Single moms who could barely afford groceries but gave anyway because they wanted to help a little girl fight cancer. He clicked to the next image. Bank records. Transaction histories. The numbers stark and undeniable. Here's where the money actually went. $425,000 for this house. Yeah, you raised more through private solicitation. We found those records too. $65,000 for a BMW. $12,000 at Neiman Marcus. $8,000 at a jewelry store. $5,000 at a resort in Cancun. The party guests were completely silent now. And here's what didn't get paid for. Ghost clicked again. Zuri's chemotherapy. Recommended by 3 different oncologists. Never started. Her medication. This prescription was supposed to be refilled 4 months ago. It wasn't. Hospital visits. She hasn't seen a doctor since her initial diagnosis. Another click. A new image filled the screen. It was Zuri. But not the Zuri from the campaign photos, not the brave little girl with the sad smile and the clean dress. This was Zuri as she looked right now. Gray skin. Hollow cheeks. Arms like sticks. Eyes that had seen too much. The photo had been taken an hour ago. At the iron pit. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring at the camera with the exhausted resignation of a child who had forgotten what hope felt like. Someone on the porch made a sound. A gasp. Or maybe a sob. "This is what you did," Bear said, his voice low and hard. "This is what your money bought, Marcus, not treatment. Not hope. A mansion and a BMW while a 7-year-old girl starved." Marcus's mask was cracking now. His face had gone pale, and his hands were clenched at his sides. "You don't understand," he said. "You don't know what it's been like. The pressure. The bills. Tasha was falling apart. And I had to." "You had to what?" Bear took another step forward. "Had to steal from a dying child? Had to let her cancer go untreated so you could keep cashing in on sympathy donations? Had to threaten to shoot her if she told anyone the truth?" The gasp from the porch was louder this time. "I never. She told us, Marcus. She told us everything. About the photo shoots. About the begging. About how you took her medicine away because she needed to stay sick for the pictures. About how you told her God was punishing her and the only way to make it stop was to do what you said. Marcus's face twisted. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely, and Bear saw what was underneath. Not fear. Not guilt. Rage. The cold, calculating rage of a predator who'd been cornered. That little bitch, Marcus snarled. I knew she'd ruin everything. I told Tasha we should have. He stopped himself. But it was too late. Everyone had heard. Should have what? Marcus? Bear's voice was deadly quiet. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, his hand moved toward his waistband. Bear saw it coming. He'd been expecting it, honestly. Men like Marcus always thought violence was the answer when their words stopped working. They always thought a gun made them powerful. They were always wrong. 3 bikers moved before Marcus's fingers even touched the grip. Chains hit him from the left, Razor from the right, and a third man Bear didn't recognize, someone from the Denver chapter, came straight up the middle. Marcus went down hard, his face bouncing off the porch decking, his gun clattering away across the wood. Don't kill him, Bear said calmly. But make sure he stays down. A zip tie materialized from somewhere. Then another. Within 30 seconds, Marcus was face down on his own porch, wrists bound behind his back, 200 pounds of angry biker kneeling on his spine. Where's Tasha? Bear asked the shocked party guests. Nobody answered. They were too busy staring at the scene in front of them, the projection still glowing on the side of the moving truck, the bikers covering every exit, their host zip-tied like a Thanksgiving turkey. I'll ask again. Bear's voice hardened. Where is Tasha Thompson? A woman near the door spoke up, her voice shaking. She went inside. When the bike showed up, I think she went upstairs. Bear nodded to Chains. Find her. Chains disappeared into the house. The sounds that followed, doors opening, footsteps overhead, a woman's scream suddenly cut short, told the story well enough. A few minutes later, Chains reappeared in the doorway, one hand gripping the arm of a woman in an expensive dress. Tasha Thompson didn't look like a monster. She looked like someone's Aunt, pretty in a tired way, with professionally done nails and designer earrings. She'd been crying, mascara running down her cheeks, and she stumbled as Chains led her onto the porch. Marcus! She wailed. Marcus, what's happening? What did you do? What did I do? Even face down and bound, Marcus's voice dripped with contempt. This is your fault, Tasha. You and your sick kid. You couldn't just. Shut up, Bear said. It wasn't loud, but Marcus shut up. Bear turned to Tasha. Mrs. Thompson. Do you know where your daughter is right now? Tasha's eyes darted around the porch at the bikers, at her bound husband, at the projection still displaying her crimes for all to see. She's in her room. She's supposed to be in her room, Marcus said. Zuri isn't in her room, Bear interrupted. Zuri was behind a dumpster in an alley, looking for food. My people found her 3 hours ago. She's being cared for now. No thanks to you. The color drained from Tasha's face. Is she okay? No. She's not okay. She's malnourished. She's going through withdrawal from the pain medication you stopped giving her. And she's got cancer that's been untreated for over a year because you and your husband decided money was more important than her life. It wasn't I didn't. Tasha was crying harder now, her words coming in broken gasps. Marcus said we needed the money first. He said the treatment would work better if we could afford the good doctors. He said a lot of things, didn't he? Bear's voice was cold. And you believed him? Even when your daughter was starving. Even when she was begging strangers for sandwich money. Even when you could see, with your own eyes, that she was dying. Tasha collapsed to her knees, sobbing. It might have been convincing if Bear hadn't seen the photos from Cancun on Ghost's laptop. The selfies on the beach. The drinks with little umbrellas. The smile on Tasha's face while her daughter wasted away. Here's what's going to happen, Bear said, addressing both of them now. The police are on their way. So is Child Protective Services. And so is a lawyer who specializes in child welfare cases. By this time tomorrow, Zuri will be in protective custody. By this time next week, she'll be in a hospital getting the treatment you should have given her a year ago. He crouched down to look Marcus in the eye. And you? You're going to prison. Both of you. Because wire fraud is a federal crime. Because child neglect is a felony. And because there are over 4,000 people who gave their hard-earned money to save a little girl's life. And they're all going to want to know what you did with it. Marcus spat blood onto the porch. You think you've won something? You're just a bunch of criminals. Nobody's going to believe. They already believe. Bear gestured toward the street. For the first time, Marcus seemed to notice the crowd that had gathered. Neighbors in bathrobes, people with phones out, recording everything. Cars pulled over, drivers craning to see, and the projection still glowing on the side of the truck. Zuri's face, pale and hollow, staring out at all of them. "You're done, Marcus. The whole world's going to know what you are by morning. And there's not a lawyer alive who can spin this into anything but what it is." Blue and red lights appeared at the end of the street. Then more after that. Bear stood up and stepped back. His work here was almost done. "I just have one question," he said. "And it's not for you, Marcus. It's for everyone here." He turned to face the party guests, the neighbors, the growing crowd of witnesses. That little girl was dying in plain sight. She was begging for help in parking lots and grocery stores. Some of you probably saw her. Some of you probably donated to her campaign. And nobody asked questions. Nobody looked too close. Nobody wondered why a child raising hundreds of thousands of dollars still looked like she was starving. He let the silence stretch. There's going to be a lot of blame to go around when this is over. But here's the thing about blame: it doesn't help anyone. What helps is action. What helps is paying attention. What helps is being the person who asks the hard questions when something doesn't feel right. The police cruisers were pulling up now, officers emerging with weapons drawn, trying to make sense of the chaos. "Zuri's going to be okay," Bear said. "Not because the system worked. Not because anyone in charge did their job. She's going to be okay, because a 7-year-old girl had the courage to say she was hungry, and one person listened." He nodded to his brothers. One by one, the bikers began mounting their motorcycles. Be that person. For the kids in your neighborhood. For the people you pass on the street. For anyone who looks like they need someone to give a damn. Because you never know, the life you save might be the one nobody else even noticed was in danger. The engines roared to life. Bear threw one last look at Marcus, zip-tied and bleeding on his own porch. Surrounded by police and shattered lies. "Welcome home," Bear said. And then he rode away. The first thing Zuri asked for, when they finally got her to Colorado Children's Hospital, was a grilled cheese sandwich. Not medicine. Not her mother. Not an explanation for any of the chaos that had unfolded over the past 12 hours. Just a grilled cheese sandwich. Doc made the call from the ambulance, a real ambulance this time, not a biker's sidecar. By the time they arrived, a team was waiting. Oncologists. Pediatric specialists. A social worker with kind eyes and a folder full of questions. They whisked Zuri away on a gurney, and for the first time since Bear had found her behind that dumpster, she was in hands that actually knew how to help. Bear waited in the hallway. Then in the waiting room. Then in the hallway again when the waiting room walls started closing in. His brothers came and went bringing coffee. Updates. The occasional awkward pat on the shoulder. None of them knew what to say. None of them had to. It was nearly dawn when the doctor finally emerged. "She's stable," Dr. Okonkwo said. She was a small woman with gray-streaked locks and the kind of calm that only came from decades of delivering hard news. Severely malnourished. Dehydrated. The cancer has progressed significantly since her last documented visit, but it hasn't metastasized. If we start treatment immediately, real treatment, she has a fighting chance. Bear felt something loosen in his chest. How good a chance? Better than she had 12 hours ago. That's all I can promise right now. It would have to be enough. The money situation resolved faster than anyone expected. The fraud was so blatant, so well documented, that the authorities moved with unusual speed. Within 72 hours, the Save Zuri Smile funds were frozen. Within 2 weeks, a court order redirected every remaining $187,000 after Marcus and Tasha's spending spree into a trust fund exclusively for Zuri's medical care. Marcus and Tasha were denied bail. The list of charges was long enough to wallpaper a room: wire fraud, child neglect, child endangerment, theft by deception. The prosecutors were talking 15 to 20 years each. But Bear didn't care about them anymore. They were yesterday's problem. Zuri was today's. 3 days after the raid, Bear came to visit. He wasn't sure why, wasn't sure she'd even want to see him. He was a stranger. Really, a scary-looking man who'd shown up at the worst moment of her life and turned everything upside down. But when he walked into her hospital room, Zuri's face lit up like sunrise. Bear. She was sitting up in bed, an IV in her arm and a children's book in her lap. She still looked fragile, would probably look fragile for a while, but something had changed. The grayness was gone from her skin. Her eyes, those huge brown eyes that had been so empty with exhaustion, now held a spark. "Hey there, little one." Bear settled his bulk into the visitor's chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. "How you feeling?" "Better. The food here is really good." He almost laughed. "Yeah? What's your favorite?" The grilled cheese. And the jello. And the mashed potatoes. She paused, something flickering across her face. Bear? Can I tell you something? Anything. Last night, when they brought dinner, I ate everything on my plate. All of it. And when the nurse came to take the tray, I asked her. She stopped. Her lower lip trembling. What you ask her? Sweetheart. I asked if I could have more. And she said yes. She brought me another whole plate and said I could have as much as I wanted. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. Nobody ever said that before. Nobody ever said I could have more. Bear's vision blurred. He blinked hard. But it didn't help. This giant of a man, who'd faced down guns and fists and the worst humanity had to offer, sat in a hospital room and cried because a 7-year-old girl had been given seconds. You can have more now. Zuri. He managed. As much as you want. For the rest of your life. 3 months later, Zuri was a different child. The chemo had done its work. Her counts were improving. Her hair was growing back soft black fuzz that she touched constantly, marveling at the feel of it. She'd gained 12 pounds, and her cheeks had filled out enough that she actually looked like a kid instead of a skeleton wearing kid-shaped skin. But the biggest change wasn't physical. Zuri laughed now. The first time Bear heard it, he didn't even recognize the sound. He'd come to visit, like he did every week, bringing her a stuffed animal, a bear, obviously, and a book about motorcycles. She'd made a joke about his beard looking like a bird's nest, and then she'd laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a scared laugh. A real, genuine, 7-year-old belly laugh that rang through the hospital room like bells. Bear had to excuse himself to the bathroom. Stood there for 5 minutes. Hands braced against the sink. Letting the tears come. He'd helped people before. That was part of the code. You looked out for those who couldn't look out for themselves. But this was different. This wasn't fixing someone's flat tire or running off a bad boyfriend. This was watching a child come back to life. Watching hope return to eyes that had forgotten what it looked like. It changed him. He wasn't sure how yet. But he knew it would. Stories like Zuri's remind us why we do this. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. The custody hearing came 4 months after the raid. By then, Zuri had been in foster care, a good placement, with a woman named Mrs. Patterson who'd fostered over 30 kids and knew how to handle trauma. But foster care was temporary. The court needed to decide where Zuri would go permanently. There was really only one option. Dorothy Williams was Zuri's grandmother, her father's mother. She'd been estranged from Tasha for years, pushed away after her son's death by a woman who didn't want reminders of the man she'd lost. Dorothy had tried to stay in Zuri's life, but Marcus had blocked her at every turn. Changed phone numbers. Moved without forwarding addresses. Threatened legal action if she came around. But now Marcus was in jail. And Dorothy was in the courtroom. Sitting in the front row. Hands clasped so tight her knuckles had gone white. The hearing was supposed to be routine. Tasha had signed away her parental rights as part of a plea deal, trading her daughter for a lighter sentence. Marcus had no legal standing at all. Dorothy had passed every background check, every home inspection, every interview with flying colors. But Marcus had one last card to play. From his seat at the defense table, he was there for a related hearing. He raised his hand. Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement. The judge frowned. This isn't your proceeding, Mr. Thompson. Please, Your Honor. It's about the child's welfare. Isn't that what we're all here for? Against the advice of both lawyers. The judge allowed it. Marcus stood. Even in an orange jumpsuit, even with shackles on his wrists, he somehow managed to look sincere. That was his gift, the ability to seem trustworthy even when everything about him screamed danger. I know I made mistakes, he said. His voice humble. Contrite. I know I let Zuri down. But I love that little girl. Everything I did because I was desperate to save her. The stress, the pressure, it broke something in me. I need help, I know that now. But placing Zuri with her grandmother would be a mistake. Dorothy Williams has a history of mental illness. She was hospitalized for depression after her son died. Is that really the stable environment Zuri needs? The courtroom murmured. Dorothy's face crumpled. But before anyone else could speak, a small voice cut through the noise. That's a lie. Everyone turned. Zuri was standing up in her seat, next to Mrs. Patterson, her small hands balled into fists. Zuri. The judge said gently. You don't have to. He's lying. He always lies. Zuri's voice was shaking, but she didn't stop. Marcus told me God was punishing me. He said I was sick because I was bad. He said if I told anyone the truth, he'd shoot me like a squirrel. The courtroom went silent. But he was wrong. Zuri lifted her chin, and for a moment, she looked 10 feet tall. I'm not bad. I was never bad. And God didn't punish me. God sent me Bear. She turned to look at the back of the courtroom, where Bear sat in the last row, trying to be invisible. Bear found me when nobody else was looking. He saved me when nobody else cared. And now I get to live with my grandma, who loves me for real. Not fake love. Real love. She sat back down. Mrs. Patterson put an arm around her. And Marcus, for once in his miserable life, had nothing to say. The judge cleared her throat. I think we've heard enough. Custody is awarded to Dorothy Williams. Case closed. 6 months later, the Iron Crusaders held their annual charity ride. It was a tradition going back 20 years, 50 miles through the mountains, ending at a barbecue that raised money for local kids in need. Usually, the club raised a few $1,000s. Enough to buy school supplies, winter coats, maybe sponsor a little league team. This year was different. This year, over 200 bikes showed up. Riders from chapters across 5 states, all of them wearing the same patch on their shoulders, a small purple ribbon with the word Zuri's Wolves. Marcus Boss, Rapses, word had spread. The story of the little girl behind the dumpster, the raid on the McMansion, the bikers who'd done what the system couldn't, it had gone viral. News stations, social media, even a segment on a national morning show. The Iron Crusaders were famous now. And they'd used every bit of that fame to shine a light on kids like Zuri. Bear led the ride. Same as always. But this year, he wasn't alone on his bike. Zuri sat behind him, her small arms wrapped around his waist, a helmet on her head that Doc had custom painted. It was purple, her favorite color, with a golden crown on top, because she wasn't just Zuri anymore. She was the little queen who'd survived. As the bikes rolled through town, people lined the streets to watch. They cheered. They held signs. Some of them cried. Zuri waved at everyone, a huge smile on her face. And Bear felt something in his chest that he'd almost forgotten existed. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The ride ended at the fairgrounds, where the barbecue was already in full swing. Zuri hopped off the bike and ran toward her grandmother, who was waiting by the food tables with a plate of ribs that could feed an army. Bear watched her go. Watched her hug Dorothy. Watched her laugh with the other kids, run through the grass, be a normal 7-year-old for maybe the first time in her life. Then he noticed what she was wearing. Not the Make-A-Wish shirt. That was gone, burned, probably, or buried in a landfill somewhere. Instead, she wore a new shirt, purple, like her helmet. And across the front, in sparkling gold letters, was a single word. Beautiful. Her name. Her truth. Reclaimed. Bear had to look away for a second. Damn allergies. Later, when the sun was setting and the crowd had thinned, a reporter approached Bear with a camera. She was young, eager, the type who thought every story needed a neat ending. Bear, she said, what do you want people to take away from Zuri's story? Bear thought about it for a long moment. Thought about the dumpster and the rain, the laminated card and the empty prescription bottle, the mansion and the party and the look on Marcus's face when he realized it was over. Thought about a little girl asking if she could have more. Some folks pray for miracles, Bear said finally. We make damn sure they get delivered. The reporter opened her mouth to ask a follow-up, but Bear was already walking away. He had a barbecue to enjoy and a little queen to spoil. Thank you for riding with us today. If you believe that the scariest looking people sometimes have the biggest hearts, subscribe to Bikers Bite. Tell us in the comments what would you have done. And remember, the rumble you hear might not be trouble. It might be help on the way.